You walk into a room and someone is there. They are not the loudest. They are not bragging. They are not posting their wins or flexing their credentials. But within minutes, everyone gravitates toward them. Conversations shift their direction. People lean in. Trust forms without effort. Who are they? What do they have that the loudest voices lack? And why does real competence so often hide in plain sight while empty confidence screams from the rooftops? The answer sits in decades of psychological research that shows something most people miss. The quietest person in the room often holds the most power, and the ones who never mention their achievements are precisely the ones everyone remembers. If you value documented psychological science and behavioral research like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from Nature Human Behavior, published November the 18th, 2024, Personality and Individual Differences, Volume 233, published in 2025, on Frontiers in Psychology's 2024 studies on humble leadership and intellectual humility from Peking University's Behavioral Economics Lab. Now back to the information, 2024, Peking University. 60 undergraduates sit in a laboratory facing economic game tasks. The research team, led by Wang and Wu, measures something counterintuitive: how humility affects fairness perception. The results land in personality and individual differences in January 2025. People primed with humility show a significant main effect. F value 1,64 equals 5.83, P equals 0.019. They choose fairer distribution schemes in dictator games. More striking, when individuals hold situational power, humility moderates their fairness perception. High humility participants perceive closer to equal distributions as fair even when they could keep more. The finding contradicts what we assume about power. We think power corrupts, that having control makes people selfish. But humility short-circuits that path. It creates what the researchers call prosocial thoughts and actions, even when self-interest is available. The mechanism is not weakness. It is not lack of confidence. It is accurate self-assessment combined with concern for the group. The pattern repeats across contexts. University of Pittsburgh, June 2024. Elizabeth Ederschild publishes longitudinal data tracking 862 people through 36,631 momentary assessments. The study appears in a leading psychology journal and reveals how narcissistic grandiosity and vulnerability fluctuate in response to status threats. Dispositionally grandiose individuals express both grandiosity and vulnerability, varying in overall levels over time. But vulnerable individuals stay consistently high in vulnerability and low in grandiosity. The critical finding: narcissistic individuals respond to status threats with decreased grandiosity in daily life. When experimentally defeated, they show similar decreases. The ones who peacock their achievements are precisely the ones whose confidence is most fragile. Their self-esteem oscillates wildly. Quiet confidence, by contrast, remains stable. It does not require constant external validation because it rests on internal standards, not social comparison. Move to 2018. Nielsen's meta-analysis in International Journal of Management Reviews synthesizes decades of humility research across organizational behavior, positive psychology, and religion. The findings establish that humility predicts well-being through specific cognitive patterns. Humble individuals see strengths alongside weaknesses. They do not place themselves in low-status roles. They accept knowledge and help from others. This combination produces the confidence, resilience, and resources needed for sustained positive self-adjustment. The construct is not self-deprecation. Studies show humble people have normal to high self-esteem. The difference is they do not need to broadcast it. 2 studies in religion find humility lessens depressive symptoms. The mechanism: humble people experience less cognitive dissonance between their self-concept and reality. They are not constantly defending an inflated self-image. Contrast that with grandiose narcissism, PMC database. A study of 452 participants explores how narcissistic dispositions affect decision-making. Grandiose narcissists are characterized by high self-esteem, personal superiority, entitlement, overconfidence, willingness to exploit others, and hostility when challenged. The researchers use the acquire a company problem, where the economically correct answer is to make no offer. Most people fail. Grandiose narcissists fail spectacularly. Their overconfidence, impulsivity, and willingness to ignore expert advice produce higher likelihood of bad decisions. After getting the wrong answer, they blame others and remain self-confident. The study documents what happens when confidence detaches from competence. It becomes a liability. The person cannot learn because they cannot admit error. Michigan Ross. School of Business, 2022. Shalina Serna publishes in Journal of Personality and Social Psychology. 395 online participants evaluate social media profiles to find cooperative, selfless, generous people. Some profiles are neutral. I saw the cutest puppy today. Others signal high social status with posts about luxury cars, clothing, food, travel. Heading to Madrid, first class, luxury. The status signaling profiles are rated as wealthier, more concerned with status, less likely to care about others. Critically, participants are less likely to recommend the status signaling person for their group. The research shows modesty is not just nice, it is strategically adaptive in cooperative contexts. And it is generally assumed that signaling status can strategically benefit people who want to appear high class, Sarene says, but it can also backfire by making them seem more self-interested. In social situations, depending on cooperation, people choose to present modestly. The mechanism operates through impression formation, a process social psychologists have studied for 70 years. Solomon Asch's seminal experiments show people integrate traits into a unified whole. Some traits are central, shaping the overall impression. Harold Kelly demonstrates in 1950 that warm is one of these central traits. When a person is described as warm and intelligent, the meaning of intelligence shifts. It becomes generous intelligence, helpful intelligence. When a person is cold and intelligent, intelligence reads as calculating, self-serving. Warmth has primacy. Studies across contexts confirm therapist warmth, empathy, and genuineness are the three most important traits for establishing trust, more predictive than credentials or techniques. The pattern extends beyond therapy. Elections. Todorov and colleagues show participants pairs of political candidates who previously ran for U.S., Senate, and House. Participants see only faces, sometimes for 1 second. They judge who is most competent. These judgments predict the actual election result 68% of the time. The person judged to have the most competent face wins. But what creates perceived competence? Not dominance alone. Recent work establishes two fundamental dimensions, warmth and competence. Susan Fisk's stereotype content model, tested across cultures, shows these dimensions answer survival questions. First, does the other intend to harm or help? Second, does the other have ability to enact that intention? People perceived as warm and competent elicit uniformly positive emotions and behavior. High warmth with low competence triggers paternalism. High competence with low warmth triggers envy. The implication is stark. You can be competent, but if you are not warm, people will not trust you. They will respect your ability but resist your influence. The person who never shows off solves this problem elegantly. By not broadcasting achievements, they signal, I'm not competing with you. I'm not a threat. This opens space for warmth. When warmth is present, competence becomes attractive rather than threatening. The sequence matters. Studies of impression formation show information that comes first carries more weight. The primacy effect. If your first signal is, I am impressive, you have framed the relationship as evaluative. The other person is now judging, comparing. If your first signal is warmth, curiosity, genuine interest, you have framed the relationship as collaborative. Then, when competence emerges naturally through action, it reinforces rather than threatens. Nature, human behavior. November 18, 2024. Kotka and colleagues publish 5 pre-registered studies with 2,034 participants. The question, does seeing scientists as intellectually humble affect trust in scientists and their research? Study 1. Seeing scientists as higher in intellectual humility associates with greater perceived trustworthiness and support for science-based beliefs. Studies 2 through 4. Describing a scientist as high versus low in intellectual humility increases perceived trustworthiness, belief in their research, intentions to follow research-based recommendations, and information-seeking behavior. The effects are not moderated by scientists' gender or race. The findings are clear. Intellectual humility increases trust. But what is intellectual humility? Not lack of conviction. Duncan Pritchard in Journal of Philosophy of Education, 2020 defines it as respect for perspectives of others, compatible with firm beliefs. You can be certain and humble simultaneously. Michael Hannon and Ian James Kidd in Journal of Ethics and Social Philosophy. 2024, add nuance. Intellectual humility is disposition to examine weak spots in one's knowledge and adjust firmness of beliefs accordingly. For complex political questions, humble people acknowledge aspects they do not understand completely. The cognitive science behind confidence reveals why this matters. April 2024. Marion Rouault publishes in The Conversation, summarizing machine learning studies of confidence and mental health. At population level, people are slightly overconfident. More than half think they are better than average drivers or more intelligent than average, but confidence expresses at different hierarchical levels. Confidence in a given decision, confidence in a task. Confidence in a cognitive domain, up to global self-confidence. Using machine learning on volunteers, researchers find people with more compulsive and intrusive thinking symptoms generally report higher confidence but have less accurate self-assessment. This pattern relates to tendency to jump to conclusions. People with more marked anxious and depressive symptoms have lower confidence in decisions but more accurate self-assessment, what researchers call depressive realism. The finding is uncomfortable. Accurate self-assessment sometimes correlates with lower reported confidence, but this is measurement artifact. The people with depressive realism are not actually less competent. They simply assess more accurately. The confident people with poor calibration are not actually more competent. They just think they are. This miscalibration has consequences. Frontiers in Psychology, May 1820-23. Douglas and colleagues publish on confidence mismatch. Evidence suggests confidence is trait-like. But research on the match between confidence and accuracy has been restricted to overconfidence effects. The study finds both too much and too little confidence result in poorer achievement, inner conflict, and social inhibition. Overconfident individuals benefit socially in some contexts. Price and Stone find people prefer financial advisors who express more confidence in investment advice, regardless of whether hesitation would be more appropriate. Overconfident individuals might benefit from being coached on this social advantage. But underconfident individuals exhibit introverted tendencies and respond negatively to socially competitive environments. The optimal zone is calibrated confidence, confidence that matches actual ability. Who naturally occupies this zone? People with secure attachment. Attachment theory, developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth in the 1970s, documents how early caregiver relationships shape lifelong patterns. Secure attachment, observed in approximately 60% of infants, is characterized by confidence in caregiver availability and responsiveness. Secure infants become distressed during separation, but are easily comforted upon reunion. This pattern associates with consistent, sensitive caregiving, fostering trust and safety. Securely attached children exhibit greater self-esteem and better peer relationships in adolescence. The effect endures into adulthood. Blake and colleagues, 2024, publish in Applied Research and Quality of Life. A birth cohort study follows participants to age 30. Secure attachment in young adulthood predicts life satisfaction at age 30. Cross-sectional research from 2024 shows secure attachment fosters both hedonic and eudaimonic well-being in adolescents and emerging adults. The mechanism operates through social competence. A meta-analysis by Groh and colleagues, published with 80 independent samples totaling 4,441 participants, establishes that attachment security associates with peer competence at effect size D equals 0.39 arg. The association is significant and not moderated by age at which peer competence is assessed. Avoidance associates with lower peer competence at D equals 0.17, resistance at D equals 0.29, disorganization at D equals 0.25. Attachment security is more strongly associated with peer competence than with internalizing symptoms, though not more than externalizing symptoms. The finding shows early attachment has enduring significance for children's developmental adaptation from infancy to early adolescence. Theory-driven studies need to address mediating processes that account for these enduring effects. Social skills mediate the relationship. Pan, Zhang, and Iskandar publish in 2024 in Journal of Assessment and Research in Applied Counseling. They examine Chinese adolescents using structural equation modeling. Secure attachment predicts peer relationships. Social skills mediate this link. The model fit indices are strong. Chi square over DF, CFI, GFI, AGFI, RMSEA, TLI, all meet thresholds. Secure attachment develops social skills, which in turn predict positive peer relationships. The process is not mysterious. Secure individuals have positive views of themselves and others. This makes them more likely to seek and effectively utilize social support during stress. Lee and colleagues, 2023 DOS, find secure attachment predicts better perspective-taking abilities in social interactions, facilitating interpersonal understanding. Influence of attachment style, on empathy study from May 2025, documents that secure attachment predicts both cognitive and affective empathy. Individuals with secure attachment display higher levels of both, attributed to early relationship interactions, promoting emotional openness to others. The pattern creates a cascade. Secure attachment leads to accurate self-assessment. Accurate self-assessment leads to calibrated confidence. Calibrated confidence creates social comfort. Social comfort allows genuine curiosity about others. Genuine curiosity builds warmth. Warmth combined with competence creates trust. Trust creates influence without effort. The person who never shows off is not hiding their light. They are allowing it to shine through actions rather than words. This is not passivity. It is strategic restraint. Contrast this with the need to constantly signal status. A computational model published in Scientific Reports, February 18, 2025, examines narcissistic self-esteem regulation. Researchers from Germany implement established verbal theories of narcissism to identify key ideological and disorder-maintaining mechanisms. Across 4 studies, they show parental praise and overvaluation lead to typical grandiose narcissistic behavioral patterns, entitled self-presentation and rivalry. Strong self-esteem oscillations follow. 2 maintaining mechanisms emerge. First, tolerance development. Narcissists can never get enough affirmation. The environment cannot permanently meet this need for external validation. Self-esteem enhancing experiences are repeatedly interrupted by frustrating experiences that lower self-esteem. The result is strongly oscillating self-esteem. Second, change in self-esteem associates with change in regulation behavior. Regulation of self-esteem can be internal or external. Narcissists rely heavily on external regulation, seeking attention, seeking validation, seeking proof of superiority. This explains the paradox. The person who brags the most is the one who needs validation the most. Their confidence is contingent, not intrinsic. It requires constant reinforcement from outside. When that reinforcement stops, even briefly, confidence collapses. The quiet person's confidence is different. It is not contingent on external feedback. It rests on accurate self-knowledge, secure attachment, and focus on learning rather than proving. Carol Dweck's work on mindset, published across decades, establishes 2 conceptions of ability. First, ability is acquirable skill. People who conceive ability this way adopt learning or mastery goals. They seek to improve competence, judge capabilities in terms of personal improvement, regard errors as natural part of skill acquisition. When performance falls short, they attribute to inadequate effort. Self-confidence remains minimally affected. Second, ability is inherent aptitude or entity conception. People with entity conception adapt performance or ability-focused goals. They seek to prove competence, demonstrate ability, avoid demonstrating low ability. Use social comparison processes. This type of goal orientation is not well suited for skill development. People view errors as threat to demonstrating ability. They avoid challenging goals. When negative discrepancy occurs between goals and current performance, they attribute to low ability. This increases vulnerability to adverse effects of failure. The difference is stark. The learning-oriented person with calibrated confidence can fail publicly and maintain self-esteem because failure is data, not identity. The performance-oriented person with fragile confidence must avoid failure at all costs because failure is identity threat. This produces the very behavior that undermines influence. They avoid challenges where they might not excel immediately. They criticize others to elevate themselves relatively. They broadcast achievements to maintain the facade, but the facade is transparent. People sense when confidence is performative versus genuine. Frontiers in Psychology, January 2025. Study on humble leadership reveals the dual impact on employees. Drawing on social information processing theory, researchers show humble leadership fosters perceived respect by employees, stimulating innovative behavior, but it also signals higher tolerance for minor rule breaking, potentially inducing time theft behavior. The mechanism, humble leadership, effectively fosters perceived respect, encouraging active participation in organizational development. However, humble leadership, by recognizing limitations and praising employees' strengths, might inadvertently inflate employees' self-competence and self-worth. This inflation could lead to heightened sense of entitlement, potentially resulting in employees perceiving leaders as more tolerant of rule violations. Situational organizational emphasis plays positive moderating role. The finding shows even humility has context-dependent effects. In hierarchical organizations, extreme humility from leaders can be misinterpreted, but in collaborative contexts, it remains consistently positive. Hierometer theory provides framework for understanding status dynamics, published by Mahadevan in Social and Personality Psychology. Compass, June 14, 2024. The theory postulates self-regard operates as part of evolved psychological system to help individuals navigate status hierarchies adaptively. It tracks a person's status in the hierarchy and motivates status-optimizing behavior. Rises and falls in status lead to corresponding rises and falls in self-regard. Higher status predicts higher self-regard. Lower status predicts lower self-regard. Rises and falls in self-regard lead to corresponding rises and falls in status-seeking behavior. Higher self-regard predicts greater assertiveness or competitiveness. Lower self-regard predicts lesser assertiveness. The theory posits consolidatory dynamic among social, psychological, and behavioral variables. Grandiose narcissism, according to hierometer theory, represents one alternative status-seeking strategy. People high in grandiose narcissism are arrogant, extroverted, authoritative. They conceptualize status pursuit as ongoing series of processes: situation selection, vigilance to status-related cues, appraisal, response execution. The extended agency model postulates grandiose narcissism comprises 4 core elements: entitled and inflated self-views, desire for self-esteem, approach orientation, greater concern with agency than communion, operating in tandem. These facilitate status pursuit and attainment, but the strategy is brittle. Scientific Reports, July 30, 2024, publishes multinational study across 61 countries with 15,039 participants examining narcissism forms during COVID-19 pandemic. Higher narcissistic rivalry predicts lower likelihood of enactment of prevention behaviors. Higher narcissistic sanctity predicts higher likelihood of prevention behaviors. The heroism, admiration, and rivalry forms act antisocially. High narcissism predicts greater endorsement of unfounded health beliefs. The sanctity form acts prosocially. Higher narcissism links to lower endorsement of unfounded beliefs. Narcissism is double-edged sword, sometimes linked to antisocial thoughts and actions, sometimes linked to pro-social thoughts and actions. Whether consequence is antisocial or pro-social depends on domain, motives, and criterion variable. The person who never shows off typically operates from sanctity or communal motivation, not rivalry. They seek status through contribution, not comparison. This produces different behavioral signature. They ask questions rather than make statements. They credit others rather than claim solo credit. They admit uncertainty rather than fake certainty. They focus on the work rather than the worker. Each behavior signals, I am here to add value, not extract validation. Over time, this pattern becomes reputation. The reputation creates influence that efforts to impress never achieve. Preparation plays role. Petty, Brignol, and Tormala's self-validation theory, tested in March 2020 by researchers examining preparedness, shows that preparedness increases reliance on thoughts irrelevant to domain of preparation. Being prepared gives people momentary confidence that can be misattributed to whatever thoughts people have in mind. Preparedness in one domain can lead to psychological changes by increasing confidence people have in accessible thoughts, even if thoughts are unrelated to domain of preparation. The key notion, generating thoughts, is not sufficient for them to have impact on judgment. One must also have confidence in them. When people are deliberative, they look for ways to assess validity of mental contents. Preparedness automatically activates primitive physiologic processes that ready organism for action. Being prepared gives momentary confidence. But if that confidence is not grounded in actual competence, it misleads. The quiet person with real competence has something different: deep preparation. They have spent thousands of hours in deliberate practice. They have confronted and overcome their weaknesses. They have built genuine expertise. This expertise does not need announcement. It reveals itself in the quality of their questions, the precision of their analysis, the ease with which they navigate complexity. People sense mastery. They cannot always articulate how they sense it, but they do. It shows in microbehaviors: the pause before answering to ensure accuracy, the acknowledgement of what they do not know, the referencing of others, work, the focus on the problem rather than personal credit. European Journal of Psychology of Education, February 19, 2024. Yang Hansen and colleagues published cross-country examination of Dunning-Kruger effect in mathematics. The study investigates association between self-assessed and objectively measured performance, called calibration accuracy. Individuals tend to overestimate or underestimate their performance in various contexts. Confidence judgment is linked to multiple factors. Misalignment between confidence and performance has long-term consequences. Within educational context, students' ability to accurately evaluate performance allows them to self-regulate learning. The Dunning-Kruger effect refers to cognitive bias, where individuals with low abilities or knowledge overestimate skills or expertise, while those with high abilities or knowledge tend to underestimate skills relative to others. Although the effect is pervasive across domains, Most research has focused on upper secondary or university students in single country settings. Limited attention has been given to younger populations and exploring confidence performance dynamics across cultures. The study finds pattern is not universal. In some cultures, with strong collective emphasis, high performers actually show accurate self-assessment rather than underestimation. The finding suggests cultural context shapes how confidence and competence relate. In individualistic cultures, high performers may underestimate to maintain social harmony, conforming to modesty norms. In collectivist cultures where group achievement is emphasized, high performers may accurately assess because they view achievement as group outcome, not personal status marker. This cultural variation explains why quiet confidence looks different across contexts. In some settings, it is understated competence with social awareness. In others, it is accurate self-assessment without false modesty. The common thread: both avoid performative confidence designed to elevate self at others' expense. University of Bern, Orth, and colleagues publish meta-analytic study on development of narcissism across lifespan. The study synthesizes longitudinal data to yield robust insights. Agentic narcissism shows medium-sized positive correlation with self-esteem, approximately 0.3. Antagonistic narcissism shows small negative correlation with self-esteem, approximately negative 0.1 to negative 0.2. Neurotic narcissism shows large negative correlation, approximately negative 0.6. Gender differences in narcissism are smaller for leadership or authority, close to 0 for grandiosity, Deichark exhibitionism facets related to agentic narcissism, close to 0 for vulnerable narcissism. Gender does not systematically moderate age differences in narcissism. The asymptotic values of long-term rank order stability provide direct estimate of proportion of interindividual variance that is completely stable across long periods. The findings show narcissism has trait-like stability, but that stability differs by type. The implication: grandiose narcissism is relatively stable early, more variable later. Vulnerable narcissism shows high stability throughout. The person who brags compulsively likely learned this pattern young and maintained it through adulthood. The pattern resists change because it is embedded in identity and reinforced by environments that reward signaling, but it is not optimal. The research consistently shows modesty combined with competence outperforms grandiosity combined with competence in contexts requiring cooperation, which is most human contexts. Solo performance tasks might favor grandiose confidence. Team tasks, relationship tasks, trust-based tasks, long-term collaborations all favor calibrated confidence with communal motivation. Studies on self-confidence in educational settings provide granular detail. American International Journal of Social Science Research, 2020. Researchers at Kandahar University measure 1,375 male and female students. Self-confidence is defined as belief or trust that student has in performing something successfully. It is related to success, achievements in education, conciliation, well-being. Self-efficacy, self-esteem, self-compassion are 3 factors affecting level. Results reveal some students are low self-confident. Most are highly self-confident. Students. Self-confidence affects learning in areas of participation, seeking goals, developing interest in lessons, decreasing anxiety, being comfortable with instructors and classmates, sharing opinions related to lessons in class. Competence, knowledge, and performance are interrelated concepts, key success for individuals and career. Lack of self-confidence creates problems not only for students, but for institutions. Current crisis in educational system is partly due to low self-confidence leading to lack of participation and unsatisfactory progress. But self-confidence must be distinguished from overconfidence. Self-confidence rests on accurate assessment of capabilities. It acknowledges both strengths and limitations. Overconfidence inflates assessment beyond reality. Studies repeatedly show overconfidence leads to poor outcomes. In decision-making, overconfident individuals ignore expert advice, make riskier choices, attribute failures to external causes. In social situations, overconfidence triggers reactance. People resist being influenced by someone who seems to think they know everything. The resistance is not conscious, it is automatic response to perceived arrogance. Authentic confidence produces opposite effect. When someone displays competence without arrogance, others want to learn from them. They seek their opinion, they trust their judgment. This is not because the person has manipulated them, it is because the person has demonstrated 3 things: capability, honesty, and goodwill. Capability through results, honesty through accurate self-assessment, goodwill through focus on collective benefit rather than personal credit. These 3 components capability, honesty, goodwill, mapped directly onto Mayer, Davis, and Scorman's integrative model of organizational trust from 1995. Trust requires ability, benevolence, and integrity. The person who never shows off signals all three. Showing off signals ability but questions benevolence and integrity. If you really have capability, why do you need to announce it? If you really care about the group, why do you focus on your own credit? If you really have integrity, why do you need others to validate your worth? The temporal dimension matters. Research on impression formation establishes primacy effects and recency effects. Information that comes first colors subsequent information. Information that comes last is most easily recalled. The person who leads with achievements creates a valuative frame. Everything they do afterward is interpreted through that lens. The person who leads with curiosity and contribution creates a collaborative frame. When their competence emerges later, it is interpreted as pleasant surprise rather than expected performance. The recency effect means people remember the last impression strongly. If your last impression is demanding recognition, that is what people remember. If your last impression is crediting the team, that is what people remember. Field experiments validate the pattern. Impression management tactics, self-promotion and intimidation, substantially backfire for those with high ability. Explanation encapsulates an attribution theory, which argues capable actors are held to higher standards in terms of how kind and honest they are expected to be. Competence combined with self-promotion decreases trustees' perceived benevolence and integrity, in turn decreasing level of trust placed in that actor. 5,606 online laboratory studies and 101,520 field experiment participants show the effect consistently. High ability individuals who self-promote lose trust. High ability individuals who do not self-promote gain trust. The mechanism: people expect competent actors to be secure enough that they do not need to brag. When competent actors do brag, it violates expectation, triggering attribution of character flaw. Neuroscience provides biological basis. Studies using voxel-based morphometry and diffuse tensor imaging show narcissistic personality disorder associates with gray matter reduction in right prefrontal and anterior cingulate cortices. These brain regions are associated with empathy, compassion, cognition, emotional regulation processing. fMRI studies of narcissism show abnormal activation patterns in medial prefrontal cortex, region implicated in mentalizing, understanding, and predicting thoughts and feelings of others. The neural correlates suggest narcissistic individuals have reduced capacity for taking others' perspectives. This is not moral failing, it is cognitive limitation, but it has social consequences. If you cannot accurately model what others think and feel, you cannot calibrate your behavior to build trust. You rely on crude strategies, signaling status, demanding recognition, intimidating rivals. These strategies work in zero-sum competitive contexts. They fail in positive-sum collaborative contexts. The person who impresses without showing off likely has normal or enhanced function in these brain regions. They accurately model others' internal states. They predict how different behaviors will be received. They calibrate their presentation to build rather than threaten. This is not manipulation. It is social intelligence. Manipulation involves deception. Social intelligence involves understanding. The difference is intent and accuracy. Manipulation uses false signals to extract benefit. Social intelligence uses true signals to create mutual benefit. Organizational psychology provides applied context. Studies of leadership show humble leaders who acknowledge limitations and credit others create higher performing teams. Openness to feedback increases learning. Acknowledgement of others' contributions increases motivation. Focus on shared goals increases coordination. These effects do not depend on the leader being less competent. They depend on the leader signaling that competence is tool for group benefit, not personal glorification. Employees perceive this distinction. They respond with loyalty, effort, discretionary energy. The humble leader gets better results not despite humility, but because of it. But humility without competence is not enough. The research is clear. Warmth without competence triggers paternalism. People like you but do not respect you. Competence without warmth triggers envy. People respect you but do not like you. The winning combination is competence with warmth, and the path to displaying both simultaneously is restraint about the competence. Let the competence emerge through action. Lead with warmth, curiosity, respect. When competence becomes visible, it enhances rather than contradicts the initial impression. Longitudinal studies confirm the pattern holds across time. Attachment security in childhood predicts peer competence in adolescence, which predicts relationship quality in adulthood, which predicts life satisfaction at age 30. The through line is social competence built on secure base. That secure base allows accurate self-assessment. Accurate self-assessment allows calibrated confidence. Calibrated confidence allows genuine connection. Genuine connection builds influence that announcement never achieves. The quiet person is not hiding. They're revealing what matters, not their need for validation, but their value to the group. The contrast is measurable. Studies document that grandiose narcissists emerge as organizational leaders and earn more in early career. But long-term outcomes are mixed. Narcissistic CEOs make riskier investments, expand into global markets aggressively, embrace new technology faster. These bold moves sometimes pay off spectacularly, but they also fail spectacularly. The narcissistic leader's career is high variance, big wins, big losses, lots of drama. The humble leader's career is lower variance, steady growth, sustainable results, less drama, which is better depends on your goals and your risk tolerance. But for most people in most contexts, sustainable results with low drama beat spectacular wins punctuated by spectacular failures. Cross-cultural research shows the pattern generalizes with local variation. In collectivist cultures like Turkey, secure attachment and positive childhood experiences are particularly pronounced in their effects on family cohesion. The association of positive childhood experiences on family cohesion may be especially strong, reflecting importance of relational attachment and social support. From a practical perspective, findings suggest attachment-based interventions focusing on secure attachment and supporting adaptive coping in family and peer contexts are effective. In individualistic cultures like United States, secure attachment predicts similar outcomes but through slightly different mechanisms. The common principle, secure attachment creates social competence creates influence, influence creates success. Studies of emotional intelligence provide mechanism. Baron model of emotional social intelligence includes intrapersonal capacities like self-regard, emotional self-awareness, assertiveness, independence, self-actualization, interpersonal capacities like empathy, social responsibility, interpersonal relationship, stress management capacities like stress tolerance, impulse control, adaptability capacities like reality testing, flexibility, problem solving, general mood capacities like optimism, happiness. The person who impresses without showing off typically scores high on reality testing. Flexibility, impulse control, empathy, social responsibility. Lower on assertiveness, defined as pushing own agenda. Higher on assertiveness, defined as confident self-expression. The person who shows off constantly scores high on assertiveness, defined as demanding recognition. Lower on impulse control regarding status signaling. Lower on reality testing regarding how others perceive them. Lower on empathy regarding others. Discomfort with constant self-promotion. The profiles are distinct. Both can succeed in specific contexts. But the contexts favoring quiet confidence are broader and more common than contexts favoring loud confidence. Meta-analyses establish effect sizes. Humility predicts subjective well-being at small to medium effect sizes. Secure attachment predicts peer competence at D equals 0.39. Intellectual humility predicts trustworthiness perception significantly across 5 studies with 2,034 participants. Modesty and status signaling predicts cooperation, partner preference, in experiments with 395 participants. Grandiose narcissism predicts poor decision-making in studies with 452 participants. Effect sizes are modest by statistical standards. But cumulative effects over lifetime are substantial. Being slightly more humble, slightly more securely attached, slightly more accurate in self-assessment accumulates across thousands of interactions to produce dramatically different social trajectories. The mechanism is reputation. You cannot control single interactions fully. People misunderstand, misinterpret, judge unfairly, but over time, patterns emerge. The person who consistently credits others builds reputation for generosity. The person who consistently acknowledges limitations builds reputation for honesty. The person who consistently focuses on problems rather than personal glory builds reputation for dedication. These reputations become social capital. When opportunity arises, people think of the person with social capital. When crisis hits, people turn to the person with social capital. The return on investment is enormous, but delayed and non-linear. The person who constantly self-promotes gets immediate returns, attention, recognition, status markers, but long-term returns are negative. People avoid them, discount their claims, resist their influence. The immediate returns diminish over time as people realize the self-promotion is not backed by proportional substance, or is backed by substance, but undermined by the promotion itself. The trajectory is inverted. Quick rise, slow fall. The quiet person's trajectory is opposite, slow rise. Sustained peak, less dramatic, more durable. Behavioral economics provides framework. Temporal discounting describes how people value immediate rewards more than delayed rewards. The person who shows off displays steep temporal discounting. They take immediate status hit from their behavior to get immediate status boost from recognition. The person who does not show off displays shallow temporal discounting. They forego immediate recognition to build long-term influence. Which strategy is rational depends on your discount rate and your estimate of future interaction probability. In transient environments with high turnover, steep discounting makes sense. Grab what you can now. In stable environments with repeated interactions, shallow discounting makes sense. Invest in reputation. Most human environments are intermediate, some turnover, some stability. The optimal strategy adapts to environment. In academic conference with strangers, you will never see again. Some self-promotion is efficient. In long-term team with daily interaction, minimal self-promotion is efficient, and the person with social intelligence modulates their strategy. The person without social intelligence uses same strategy everywhere. They become predictable. Predictability without trust is vulnerability. Predictability with trust is reliability. Same behavior. Opposite interpretations. The difference is reputation. Psychological safety research illuminates why quiet confidence creates productive environments. When team members feel safe to take interpersonal risks, admit mistakes, ask questions, propose ideas, performance improves. But psychological safety requires specific leadership behaviors, admitting one's own fallibility, inviting participation, being available and approachable. Humble leaders create these conditions naturally. They admit fallibility because they accurately assess their limitations. They invite participation because they genuinely want diverse input. They are approachable because they are not defending fragile ego. These behaviors create virtuous cycle. Safety enables learning. Learning improves performance. Performance reinforces that the approach works. Contrast with the leader who cannot admit error, cannot invite dissent, cannot be approached without ego defense. These behaviors create vicious cycle. Lack of safety prevents learning. Prevention of learning degrades performance. Poor performance triggers more ego defense. The cycle accelerates downward. The striking finding is that both leaders might be equally competent on technical dimensions. The difference is psychological dimension. One welcomes growth. The other fears exposure. Research on imposter phenomenon provides interesting counterpoint. Imposter phenomenon describes high achievers who cannot internalize accomplishments, fear being exposed as fraud. Canning and colleagues, Social Psychology and Personality Science, 2019, House. Study first-generation college students. Those perceiving high classroom competition experience imposter phenomenon more intensely. The phenomenon is distinct from humility or accurate self-assessment. Imposter phenomenon involves discounting valid evidence of competence. It is self-assessment bias in opposite direction from narcissism, too low rather than too high. Both are miscalibrated. The person who impresses without showing off, typically, is not experiencing imposter phenomenon. They accurately assess their competence. They simply choose not to announce it unnecessarily. The distinction is crucial. Imposter phenomenon causes distress. It is marked by anxiety, fear of exposure, reluctance to take appropriate credit. Quiet confidence is marked by calm, focus on contribution, willingness to take appropriate credit when directly asked. The internal experience is completely different. One is painful, the other is peaceful. Treatment for imposter phenomenon involves recalibration toward accuracy. Cognitive behavioral therapy helps people acknowledge actual achievements. Mindfulness helps people notice and release harsh self-judgment. Self-compassion training helps people treat themselves with kindness they would extend to others. The goal is not to make them announce achievements loudly. The goal is to make them accept achievements internally. Once internal acceptance is secure, external signaling becomes strategic choice rather than anxious compensation. Historical examples illustrate the pattern. Many of the most influential scientists, artists, leaders in history were known for personal modesty combined with extraordinary achievement. They let the work speak. When recognition came, they deflected to collaborators, predecessors, good fortune. This was not false modesty. It was accurate attribution. No achievement is solo. Every breakthrough builds on prior work, depends on enabling conditions, requires collaboration. Acknowledging this is not weakness, it is accuracy. And accuracy builds credibility in ways that claiming sole credit never does. Contemporary examples confirm. Study leaders in your field, the ones with most lasting influence. How do they present? Most likely, generous with credit, open about limitations, focused on problems, not personalities, willing to say, I don't know. These behaviors are not accident. They are choice. Choice informed by understanding of social dynamics. Reputation building, long-term influence. The person who impresses without showing off has often learned through experience that showing off is counterproductive. Early career, they may have tried it, received negative feedback, adjusted, or they observed others trying it, saw the consequences, chose different path. The path requires confidence, not confidence that you are superior, confidence that you are sufficient, confidence that your work will be recognized without announcement, confidence that your value does not depend on others, acknowledgement, this is secure base. From secure base, you can afford generosity. You can afford admitting error. You can afford saying, I don't know. These admissions do not threaten you because your worth is not contingent on appearing perfect. Research on self-determination theory provides final piece. Ryan and Dexy's framework identifies 3 basic psychological needs: competence, autonomy, relatedness. When all 3 are satisfied, people experience optimal motivation and well-being. Competence, feeling effective in interactions with environment. Autonomy, acting from integrated sense of self. Relatedness, feeling connected to others. The person who shows off is usually attempting to satisfy competence need, but the method undermines relatedness. Constant self-promotion signals, I am separate, above, different from you. This blocks connection. Paradoxically, the attempt to demonstrate competence prevents satisfying relatedness, which reduces overall well-being even if competence need is temporarily met. The person who does not show off satisfies all 3 needs more effectively. Competence through actual achievement. Autonomy through choosing when and how to display capability. Relatedness through behaviors that signal, I am like you, part of this group, here to contribute. The 3 needs reinforce rather than conflict. The result is sustainable well-being and influence. Final consideration. The research shows these patterns are malleable. Attachment style can shift through corrective relationships. Narcissistic traits can moderate through therapy. Self-assessment accuracy can improve through feedback. Social skills can be learned. The person who currently shows off constantly is not doomed. The person who currently hides capability entirely is not stuck. Both can move toward optimal zone, calibrated confidence, communal motivation, strategic restraint. The movement requires 3 things. First, accurate self-knowledge. What are you actually good at? What are your real limitations? Second, secure base. Internal sense of worth, not dependent on constant validation. Third, social intelligence. Understanding how your behavior affects others and adjusting to build trust. These 3 capacities develop over time through deliberate practice and experience. They are not innate gifts. They are learnable skills. The person who impresses without showing off has learned them, often through trial and error, sometimes through explicit instruction, always through reflection on what works and what does not work. The skill set is available to anyone willing to do the work. 2025. The research continues. New studies examine cultural variations, neural mechanisms, developmental trajectories, intervention effectiveness, but the core finding remains stable across decades of research. Quiet confidence built on secure attachment and accurate self-assessment produces better long-term outcomes than loud confidence built on need for external validation. The mechanism operates through trust, cooperation, reputation, and sustained relationships. These social goods accumulate over time to create influence that announcing achievements never replicates. The quietest person in the room holds power precisely because they do not need to announce it. Their competence speaks, their warmth invites, their restraint signals security, and everyone notices. June 2024. A research team unearths archival data from 1970s showing same pattern in organizational settings, before social media, before internet, before modern performance culture. The pattern predates contemporary context. It reflects fundamental human social dynamics. The person who contributes without claiming credit builds coalition. The person who claims credit for every contribution exhausts allies. The pattern held then, the pattern holds now. The pattern will hold in future, not because of cultural fashion, because of how human psychology works. Trust requires evidence. Competence provides evidence through results. Warmth provides evidence through behavior toward others. Restraint about announcing competence allows warmth to dominate initial impression. Then competence reinforces rather than contradicts. The sequence builds trust. Trust builds influence. Influence creates impact. Impact creates legacy. The person who never shows off leaves the deepest mark.